Okay. I mean, I guess it's still 26.3. It is going to be a separate video file, so. Right, so what I really want to do is do this. So what was I doing? The rotation wasn't. Oh, like the physics. I couldn't edit the physics, and I don't know why. Physics update. Like as far as the physics can tell, it's still block rendering. Like okay, let's do that. Let's still render the block. Make sure I didn't break it somewhere else. Change block. Maybe I changed something else and forgot. So let's not take this branch. Oh, but the physics chunks come from the gen chunks, and the gen chunks are saying this is not an object anymore. Yes. Fine. We'll hack it. And that happens in the background, so I can't just manually do it. So we actually have to. And generate chunk doesn't know whether it's getting used for physics or not. So we have to make the lighting equals block j of I of z is solid is type does not equal 0 and type does not equal bt picker. Like eventually we'll figure out a smarter way to do this, obviously, but then is solid. Now the lighting can clear it. And then shoot, we still can't do it now. It's still, oh right, now if it's in the lighting, so now when we actually generate the voxel data, copy segment, we can go through this data. How much data did we do? We copied 16 times x1 minus x0. Let's just actually do this. x0, x less than x1, plus x. Yeah, because these are not indexed linearly. They have gaps in them, so I actually need to do the same thing. Okay, so where a equals 0, a less than 16, if bt plus sub a equals bt picker. Hack to hack. Then that equals bt none. So we'll have to figure out a better way to do this. I mean, I can also just have it not go into the physics sim and have some other way of dealing with that. But okay, it works for now. So rotate. Okay, so that's all working, and it does look like it's facing the correct way. And I haven't changed anything else, so the sim should still behave the same. Okay. And now you should be able to imagine what's going to happen here, right? There'll just be some kind of grabber that grabs the thing and then drops it off on the other side. So that's back in logistics. So we want it to extend a little into the belt. And we don't want it to extend into the machine, but it'll be invisible that it extends into the machine, so we don't care. Okay, so then we want a grabber. Which would just be a block for now. And its position is at one end, and its size is a little bit bigger than that. So let's check that that's at the input end. Yeah, I really do need to speed up my start time. Oh, I didn't position it properly. It's at the input. It's at the output end. Okay, that's not what I thought that would do. Oh, right, yeah. Positive X is the facing, is the direction it's facing. So I forgot to position it at 0.5 minus 0.125. Boy, I should just do a scale factor or something so that then these are all nice integers. Okay, so then its position, we have to compute that from its state somehow, is going to be, has to be lerp pos from 0.5 at the input to negative 0.5 at the output. So pos just needs to go from 0 to 1. And then we'll all do the right thing. Okay, so move that out. So, state. And we need the logistics long tick. Okay, which is this? So, where's the offset? That. Then do we set offset to 0 some other time in this path? No, we just don't use the offset. Okay, so we can just compute this once up front. Combine might have been doing that for us anyway. Who knows? So that's how far you animate in between states. So if we want it to take, so let's say what the states are. So state equals 0. Yeah, we might definitely want these to run at shorter ticks so that they can run faster. So if state is 0, because right now it's going to take 2 ticks at least, because it needs 1 tick to go one way and 1 way to go the other way. I'm running out of space, but I'm not even using that drive. Wait, which drive is that? Oh, yeah, that's just another map of that drive. 290 bytes free, but okay, yeah. I'm not streaming to that one anymore, am I? I told it not to. I switched it to a different drive. Yeah, okay, it's streaming to the other drive. So I don't know why it's running out of space. I mean, it's maybe just the same warning because it's barely got any space. The drive I normally would be writing this stuff to when the power went out the other day and came back up, since that drive isn't letting me write to it. I need to reboot again, and I forgot to do it before, and then I didn't want to wait for the reboot to start the stream. So, okay, so if we make this just take one tick each way, then we could say state 0 is when it's waiting. Okay, right. So we need to know if it's waiting or not, if it's animating or not. It's like the belts. The belts have, some of the slots are mobile and some are not mobile. So we need some kind of state for that. So if PI moving, so we can do that. So state 0 immobile at pickup. State is 1 animating towards to drop off. State equals 2 animating towards pickup. And if we wanted them to take multiple ticks, these would be ranges. 0 would be immobile, then 1 to 4, and then 5 to 9, or something like that. So, and I'm not giving them enums because this is all a hack that I expect to replace very soon, like this, just to get it working. So, PI state equals 0, pause equals 0. PI state equals 1, pause equals offset goes from 0 to 1. PI state equals 2, pause equals it's 1 minus offset isn't quite right. It's minus 1.0 over long tick length. And maybe that works. Okay, and then I gotta use that in the sim, which is here. So we have to do this differently. So if PI state is 2, that's animating to the thing, and we just ticked, then we drop the item. No, we just went to the pickup. This got us to the pickup. So we go into state 0, which is waiting at pickup. If we have no item, and we have a target, and our state is 0, then we can pick something up. Else, if state is 1, then we should be ready to drop off. Where we should only be able to get to this state but we could pick something up without having anywhere to drop it off. All right, so when we pick it up, we go into state 1 to go to drop it off. But there might be nowhere to actually drop it. In which case we should probably stop in the middle. So we'll need to add more states. State 1. So we'll allow this. It'll move over the drop-off point, but there won't be anything to drop off. But it should have an item. It shouldn't be able to get into the state without an item. So if there is somewhere to drop it off, then we can drop it off. Otherwise, we just stay in this state. Oh, we lost a curly brace somewhere. Right here. Yeah, quit telling me I'm running out of space. I'm not writing to that anymore. So just gonna keep bitching about it? Okay, I didn't get that right. How did we get to state 1 without having an item? We didn't check that there was an item. We just found the slot. So we were just always removing something, but we were removing 0. And do we check that there's... Yeah, we do check that there's room to edit. Oh, we need to update the state. We need to go to state 2 in that case. Okay. All right, so now we just need to draw it while it's being pulled across. Let's make it go a little bit further, rendering-wise too, so it looks better. Where's the renderer? It's before the debug renderer. Oh, it's before the tick, right. Probably should move it after the tick. Good Lord, where is it? There it is. But before the debug render. Okay, so then we'll just call the add sprite in the right spot. That we'll have to rotate around explicitly in a second. Okay, so I want to make it a little wider. So let's make it go 1.5 wide. Now it goes from 7.5 to that. Okay, so this needs to it just needs to offset. It just needs to rotate that. That's unrotated, the 90-degree rotated one, and then I don't know which one of these is which. So I might need to reverse those. So then AX equals speed lerp pos 0.75 negative 0.75, and Y equals zero, AZ equals 0.125. Those are the center points. Now I need to apply the rotation. So, and then the type is PI arrow item. XYZ, XAY. So AX is rot. Let's rot. And rot of pi rot of, oh, I did these in sane order, which is not necessarily this order. Okay, something like that. All this draw stuff should be in its own function, quite possibly. Okay, it didn't seem to actually draw it at all. there's a weird glitch in the animation system there, where it's reanimating towards the destination multiple times instead of the state 0 thing working. So it's something that's not setting it to state 0, I think. Why does the sprite not show up? Oh, because I didn't add this. Didn't add these. Can you string a row of pickers together? No. I intentionally made pickers not transfer between pickers. Okay, so there's a little black one that it draws going the wrong way. Oh, that doesn't really make any sense. I mean, I do expect the black one to draw because I didn't make it only draw it in the correct state. But I'm not sure why it's at the wrong end. Why is it going in the opposite direction? And why does it not? Oh, I bet that's because my rotation is backwards. Well, let's just see. That's a help for debugging, to see whether it's attached on the right side or not. Yep, okay. And it's not positioned, it's positioned too high. Right, so I gotta turn on these things. Okay, so we need to lower it. If state does not equal 0, then we render it. Could also look at PI item is 0 actually, because yeah, we only render it in state 1, animating towards drop off. And we want to move it down. Does. Yeah, just as a game design thing, I want you to have to not string pickers together, and because then it simplifies my life creating this. Okay, so you've still got that glitch. The glitch is if it's not ready to drop off, so it needs to stay in the drop off state. So the state 0 should be it's at the right, so it needs stop at states in both cases. Okay, so immobile at pickup, animating towards drop off, state equals 2, immobile at drop off. So if it picks something up but can't drop it off, then it stays there. And here we'll just not even look at the state, and we'll just look at PI item not 0. And then we got to fix the animations, the tick system to actually obey that. Okay, so if state is 0, okay, so if state, wait, what were the, yeah, let's do, this will be more consistent. Let's have the states count downward. That way the state 0 is immobile at pickup. State 1 is animating towards pickup. State 2 is immobile at drop off. 3 is animating towards drop off. So 0, that, this is this one, Okay. Immobile at pickup, aiming towards pickup. Okay. So it's right here. If we were animating towards pickup, now we are at pickup. If we were animating towards drop off, now we are at drop off. So then these only have to test for 0 and 2. Okay, and then they need to set the right states. So this switches to state 1, and this switches to state 3. All right, looks like that's working. Now we can't have lots of pickers in the current thing because it's drawing these inefficiently, but does it seem to be picking them up a little bit? I think it is. I think they are raised a little bit when it picks them up. It doesn't animate the transition between the two heights, but that's fine because it's so fast. Yeah, I think that works. But anyway, so the pickers need to be rendered through a smarter system. They need lighting. They actually have normals and stuff, so if we just turned on lighting, it would work. Lighting and textures, and they should actually be attached in some form here. I guess if I require that they have an adjacent machine, then they'll always be attached to an adjacent machine. That might work. Let's do and then get more stuff on there. Okay. So yeah, you can see this one. We'll have to wait sometimes for a spot to drop it. And it's of course offset because I've centered it, but there is no actual center position to drop to. So I could offset the pickers a little bit to fix that. Need to try to drop where it's full, as opposed to just sitting and waiting. Or so the other thing it could do is it could try to actually find an empty spot. If there's a thing coming down, the the real pickers that I'm thinking of are these mobile arms that can actually position, pick things up from random places. So you could also do some kind of thing like that where this, instead of being a solid bar, is a positional, is a thing that can be aimed and can actually pick them up from different spots on the thing. That could be a more advanced tech. This simple tech is still more timing sensitive, whereas that would just be able to keep the input rate high. On the other hand, if basically these currently buffer, they pull things in and wait for a drop off. So if they pulled it in for a machine before the machine was ready, like I think what Factorio does is it waits till the machine has an open slot and then the picker goes and grabs it. If we went this way where the picker grabs it and then sits and waits, that would act as a one item buffer that would actually smooth out the timing problem. But I think it might look nicer for it to wait until it completes to do the grab, and then there would be the timing behavior where the smart pickers would be nicer. And That could be a reasonable tech thing. Like, hey, you want to switch to smart pickers to get your machine efficiency to max. So it might be okay to just have these sort of less efficient pickers that don't buffer, that wait for the machine to say it's ready. So yeah, now we got to do feeding into machines. So then the question is, do we need pickers that are faster than this? Currently the picker can grab every other, which I think is plenty fast, because you just need 2 pickers to grab everything. Like if I actually add more, let me save that. If we add more space, that'll absorb some things till they reach a more stable, steady state, I think. No, nothing should ever get by. Oh, no, they're still getting by. Maybe it hasn't hit the steady state yet. These should be able to grab between them every other as long as their dest is never blocked. So at some point they should reach a steady state where their dest is never blocked. But they have not reached it yet. Or maybe they won't. Maybe there's some aspect to the system without the buffering that causes it to. Because of like these are spaced weirder or something. But yeah, that causes it to not quite get them some of the time. That's kind of cool. I suspect if these had the same spacing as these did, then it would actually always be consistent. Oh, they do pick it up. The factorial ones do pick it up and wait for the machine to be ready. But they do only pick up things that the factory can use, that the machine they're attached to can use, right? They're automatically smart that way, I assume. I was thinking about making them not be smart that way. That would be the more advanced picker would actually only pick items that are usable by its input. So initially you're required to make sure you don't feed the wrong things to machines or something like that. I'm probably going to disable the current behavior where the picker can transfer between belts, so that you probably wouldn't be able to do any abuse, because if it can only feed to machines, you presumably couldn't abuse it. I mean, I'll only do that if there's a gameplay reason. I can always leave them in as a sort of fast transfer. But yeah, I do think there might be some potential if you want to go diagonally, you just sort of, use pickers. I guess, yeah, I could just build this, right? If we have this go this way, and then a picker picks off of it and drops here. I need to flip it to the other side of the belt, which I don't have any way to do right now. Yeah, you'd have to go a long way around currently. You have to go there, and then there, and then there. That puts it on this side. And now you can use a picker here. Oops, I forgot to rotate it first. So if I put a picker here, then that'll drop there, go to there. And then I put a picker here. Like, I don't think that actually gets you I don't think that actually gets you over here faster than if you just went directly. Oops. Dang it. What is that? Why does it keep doing that? It's weird. Right, so that's the fastest I can find to try to sort of do this diagonal movement. Yeah, the problem with having a dumb picker that can pick up wrong things is that it just gets stuck, and then you have to come along and fix it. And maybe that's not fun because you have a big row of machines and they're all in that state, and you either need a UI item to a UI interaction to clear an item out of it, or you have to destroy it and rebuild it. So maybe that's too unfun. Right. So if we start some stuff, we want a pair of things on here. We want something on this side, on this one, and somewhere on here. No, that's on the wrong side. Come on. I want a thing next to them. Oh, that's already filled up anyway. God damn it. Yeah, I need to get the war makers going again so that I can control where they're created. Let's go ahead and save that. So now I need to get the machines working again. But now they won't interact with belts at all. They'll only interact with pickers. Right, so I just need to make the pickers pick from them. Okay, so all right, so we have that. So this is picking up. Okay, so if so machine info mi arrow output is not 0, then we can grab it in the picker. Item equals mi arrow output, mi arrow output equals 0. And pi state is 3. And for now, as a hack, we will store it into the output. Item is, that's the other, we're storing it. Output equals pi item. We said the item had to be non-zero here. Yep. Let's just do the assert here in case we rearrange the code later. Pi item equals 0. Pi state equals 1. Okay, so that'll stick into their one slot output. Yeah, the redepositing maybe can work. I don't know. It's if the output is just full, which is a state you get into a lot in Factorio, then you still need some way to manually clear it, is the problem. Obviously, if you're planning on replacing them with Well, I guess that's the thing. If you're using dumb pickers and it's the wrong thing, then that picker's in the wrong spot anyway. That picker's never going to work. Because the idea is you don't normally try to feed into a single stream if you're using dumb pickers. You can't try to feed into a single stream the multiple types of items. So I guess if it ever picks up the wrong type of item, you're screwed anyway, because you're either putting the wrong type of item on the belt or you're putting the wrong thing. So I guess the case is if you were putting the wrong stuff on the belt and then you fix that and now you're putting the right stuff on the belt and you clear the belt by hand, you still have the problem that they're stuck. So if it were full of the wrong item, you cleared them by hand, then the pickers would dump them back on and you'd have to pick them back up again. Which is maybe okay. I suspect it would still get annoying. We could try it though. So what did I forget here? What was I in the middle of doing? Okay, right. So the problem is that they only have a one item buffer because I don't have them doing anything anymore. So they no longer care about directions. They no longer care about any of this stuff. If it went to 0, then output a thing. If its timer is 0 and there's no output, then start making a thing. If it went to 0, then consume whatever it had in its output buffer. And if its output buffer is not empty, start the timer. That doesn't quite work. If somebody puts something in, the timer is already at 0. Yeah. You need to consume it the moment you start the timer, which is how a machine assembly thing, I do intend that to work. The moment you start assembling, you do free up a slot for things to come in, I guess. Is a reasonable way for that to work. So yeah, I'm not using smart meaning the factorial meaning of smart intentionally. Yeah, this is unlikely to have a multiplayer thing. It's trying to synchronize this stuff over multiplayer. It's too much of a pain. How can I make the or eater work? I mean, the problem is just that I'm using this output, which is a hack. It was just a intentional hack. I can't clear it till we went to 0. Oh, but I don't clear it. So if you put it in, if you insert into it and it's at 0 already, then we don't clear it. Then we hit this case and the timer is 0 and we start the timer. So that does the right thing. We just have to make sure that we don't insert if the timer is not already 0, but we won't because it'll never be empty. But we could check that explicitly, but I don't think I need to. Okay, let's see if that works. Networking is in the to-do list, but it's networking for OBBG, the abstract open game that can be configured to do multiple things. The logistics sim, I do not expect to network. So these will never work without pickers now. So these need machines that are emitters. Oops, wrong thing. I don't remember which one is which. That's the wrong one. Is it paying attention to the orientation? I don't think it is. Although it's not creating, so maybe it is. Okay, why is that not? We've got many machines, unfortunately, so I can't. Let's delete the other machines so that I can breakpoint. Since these machines don't do anything anyway, I can even save it after this, since they were no longer in a valid position. All right, so we want a breakpoint. On the sim. Check machines. Here we go. Oh, it's because it's still if zeroed out. That's why. All right. All right, so there's a question of like whether we want to have the handle sort of stop at the end. And then here we want this to be an eater. And I believe it doesn't care about the orientation. Yeah, it does not care about the orientation, so we have to fix that eventually. Is this one turned around? Okay. There was a glitch there where it did it twice. Okay, yeah, I want to test this by putting that one. And, oh, right, it automatically places it in the right thing. So I want to compare the speeds of those. Oh, except it's on the wrong side. Great. Oh yeah, that's getting there faster. So yeah, if we add one more, so you can actually see that this is staying consistently out of sync, even though it keeps having to wait. That's because as soon as the picker pulls it out, it starts generating the next one, and it does have a little internal buffer. And so as a result, even though it has to wait here, that doesn't cause this machine to resynchronize. And I might want to change that. Like, this is more streamlined, but maybe this should be the more advanced tech. Maybe there shouldn't be buffers by default. It's easier to code, though, also. So now these should never be able to catch up. I brought them back to being equal numbers, but there's a bunch on there. They are able to pick from both sides, prefer closer, but place only on the far side. Yeah, I don't care about the exact details of that stuff. I'm happy to do different things for this. But so now you can see, if I get the rotation correct, that these can be generic machines, right? The machine processing is now totally independent of the picking processing. So the machines could do arbitrary things. The machines can have an output as well as an input. Like right now, the picker logic needs to know about this. The picker logic needs some kind of function to call for a given machine that it's feeding to find out what inputs it wants on a given side or outputs, etc. Currently, it just assumes. It relies on me to hook them up correctly. If I try to extract from an eater, I can. Right, like let's make this clearer. And then if I add another thing on this side, right, that's pulling them out of this thing. I don't know how it was able to pull them out quite that fast. That seems a little odd. Oh, this needs a turn. Not sure where it's getting them from. Maybe that's a bug. No, okay. It was just some temporary glitch. Right, so it's just stealing it out before it gets destroyed. But now they'll start getting destroyed. So that's just a glitch. That's just, I haven't programmed in the actual logic to know which things you're allowed to take from, which ones you're only allowed to put in. Ones being dropped down are drawn over top of ones they should be behind. That may be. I mean, it's just kind of arbitrary sorting here because they're sprites. It's supposed to be alpha testing, except I don't know how it can alpha test because it's using a fragment cheater, and so I thought your fragment cheater disabled alpha test, and you have to do the alpha test yourself in the fragment cheater, but I'm not, so I don't know how alpha test here is working, but it seems to be. I mean, it's got this border problem, but this is all just, that's all still hacked as well. I want to do that right later. And of course, this just got totally backed up and everything stopped producing. And your power usage would go down if you start having the power modeling that Factorio has. All right, so that seems reasonable. Let's go ahead and save that factory. All right, so now what should I do? If people have opinions. I still need to tweak the pickers to actually feed machines properly based on their orientation. Dropped frames, 1,502. Or I could start, doing where you construct things out of other things. Did I say something about elevators or vertical belts? Somebody suggested them at some point, and I said I didn't think I wanted to do it. I think I wanted to force you to have to use the ramps. Half-height conveyor belts, I already tried. I think it would work. I just don't want to turn it on for real yet. What else? Or I could polish these up. I mean, the eater and the maker are not real because they want to actually, there wants to actually be a thing where there's ore in the world, then there's ore blocks in the world, and you have to place drills or something on top of the ore blocks, and that's what the ore maker works from, and then it's slowly eating out the ore underneath it so that it runs out eventually. That's all stuff that has to get done at some point. Store promises on conveyor belts is a thing I talked about, which is that the conveyor belts store an array of what's in each slot in the conveyor belt. And when something begins an animation planning on pushing something into that spot, it would probably simplify everyone's life if it's stored in that slot, a promise, the idea that it's reserved. I guess you could call them reservations. So that no one else then tries to animate something into that same spot, because it's not actually going to put it there until the next tick. So, and this is all happening during, so it would help if you start having faster ticks, things operating in between ticks, that they would need to know that. But also just during this tick, next tick, it's going to move that object there. So anything that runs after it on this tick needs to know that that slot is reserved. As everything is currently set up, we kind of statically guarantee it, avoiding it. If you don't avoid it, someone else could decide to animate a thing into it, and that'll cause it to animate in, but then once it actually finishes animating, the simulation step next tick will actually see it's filled and won't actually allow it to happen. So what happens is this doesn't break the simulation, but currently will break the animation. It'll try to animate things that actually aren't allowed to move. And I don't know if we hit any cases in that currently, because like I said, I did a bunch of logic, but it might be cleaner if I just did put a thing in. And there was a particular case where I have a hack that could perhaps be hacked in a different way. There's this whole will last slot be full next frame thing or next tick thing. Not mesh builder, logistics. In the belt, last slot filled next tick flag. However, that exists in part because there's no slot in the items for it. You'd need to actually expand the items array by 1 or 2, actually, 1 for each side, to have somewhere to store that promise. So, nobody in chat has expressed an opinion about what I should do. Back to that to-do list. So there's some conveyor belt stuff I can still do. Then correct picker logic for machine sides, but for that I need real machines as well. Real driller machines, furnaces. I'll just use the Factorio terminology here. I don't know how exactly I want these things to work. They're starting to deal with liquids. Want to have a Minecraft style water. And then you can use that as in like a coolant. I guess steam engines is how Factorio also uses water. And then Factorio has oil, and Minecraft has lava. So you could go down one of those paths as another kind of input. The oil is kind of interesting because you refine it or whatever. I don't know what how exactly that thing works in Factorio, but you can, you have crude oil and you turn it into real oil or whatever, and other byproducts and stuff. We could have byproducts for furnaces, like you could have, if you're extracting iron, what we could have some kind of thing where when you smelt it, there's runoff. There's probably some term for that. I don't know. For the non-iron parts of it or something. And then maybe later, when you're advanced, you could start. Like, I don't know what the actual. I'd have to look at what the actual geology of it is. But say you need silicon for making like super high tech stuff. Maybe silicon is this really trace thing that you can find intermixed with the ore. So you need to use the leftover stuff from the furnace, run through, like get a ton of that and run it through another thing. So there's a whole bunch of samey kinds of stuff to do. Yeah, it's unlikely to aim for that much higher than Minecraft quality of fluids. Like, I don't really want to do the fluid sim part. That's actually kind of annoying. Like, Factorio doesn't, right? They just have the big lake, and then I don't know what they do for the oil, but I mean, it's just 2D, right? They don't have to worry about it. Having to actually have like an oil reservoir that lowers as you do it. I don't know. It's just a whole extra sim that's kind of a pain in the ass. Like the source block thing in Minecraft is such a total hack. But I think I might still kind of do it the same way. I just wouldn't let you place them, so it wouldn't have the same downsides that hack does. But you kind of just want this lake to be infinite. You don't really want to do a fluid sim on the lake. And then the problem is that, well, what happens if you mine underneath and expose a thing? Then the water needs to flow down, and it ought to all run out rather than be infinite. And it's just all such a pain. But because Liquid is another interesting resource in the real world, that and Factorio exploits that with a different behavior. Instead, you can't put it on conveyor belts. You have to make pipes, or something like that. And in the same way, like a power thing, that's very obviously ripping off Factorio, but it's also in lots of other sims like that. So I don't think it's that Factorio specific. Right? Furnaces are Factorio and Minecraft. assemblers is the Factorio term, but it's the obvious thing that you do. Like, you build machines, you know, the constructors. You see this in both Factorio and Minecraft. Minecraft has redstone, which isn't exactly power; it's more control logic. But you see it in, I don't even know what other sims there are at a similar scale of Factorio, but you know, I don't know, City Skylines or something like that. You see it in those. Like, I don't think Dwarf Fortress has anything like that, but trying to think of other things at that sort of scale. Of course, you need an end goal. Why are you constructing this stuff? So that's the question: is do you want the enemies and tower defense-ish gameplay that you find in Factorio? Should they be more like Minecraft enemies? Do you want enemies at all? I mean, you can have a peaceful mode that has no enemies, but I think putting in enemies is interesting. You can, if the enemies are just ground crawlers, ground walkers, then you could just build all your stuff up in the sky and it wouldn't really work. They could just not attack it. But I think if we require that your stuff be attached to the ground, and then they can destroy the ground stuff, and maybe it doesn't collapse when it's not attached to the ground, but it just doesn't work when it's not attached to the ground. Gives them something to attack, and then the attackers could have ranged attacks, and then eventually you have flying attackers. That would feel different from Factorio. And it's just an obvious thing you have to do once you go 3D. You've got to have flying attackers. So then you would start building roofs over your machines and stuff like that, and you know, put turrets on top. You could potentially not build roofs if you put turrets everywhere or something. But that's assuming you want to go with the tower defense style gameplay, which I don't even know. Yeah, gremlins that muck up the works are sort of what the enemies are, except that they can't just you can defend against them and prevent them from mucking up the works, which you kind of want, because you want to spend your time building new machines and less spend your time fixing things going wrong. Like the whole, like, you know, having weapons that switching game genres, having weapons that degrade over time is this trade-off of, you know, forces you to keep getting new weapons, but it also can be frustrating because you have to keep getting new weapons. And so it's a trade-off, in different games pick different places on that trade-off in terms of things like weapons degradation. So in this kind of case, having, if your machines wore down, that could get frustrating if you're constantly spending your time repairing machines. Now you will potentially be constantly replacing your machines to upgrade them or whatever. But maybe not. Like, it's kind of cool to also enable multiple ways of playing the game. So like maybe you leave all your old stuff running and it's not as efficient, but you leave it running and you start building the smarter stuff elsewhere, with more efficient stuff elsewhere, if there's enough resources around to do that. But yeah, you need the equivalent of a gold sink. You do need something that you're building. So one of the ideas is that you do these big powers of, not 10 necessarily, but essentially powers of 10, where to build an X, you need 10 Ys, and you keep doing chains of those, so that to build 10 levels into the hierarchy, you have to accumulate 1 million of these other things. So that would take a long time. So that's sort of how you do a gold sink, is you just make stuff that's really expensive to build, but you do it a little at a time, so it's not, so each thing can be making progress, seem to be making progress at a potentially reasonable rate. Obviously, once you get farther down, you have to have so much stuff feeding into it that the rate does slow down no matter what, but. I think somebody's saying that in Factorio they don't really like to optimize, whereas lots of games like Infinite Factory and such are are interesting to optimize for, and that's a negative for him for Factorio. And I mean, I don't know. I guess that part of that is that those other games are sort of puzzle games that explicitly incentivize the optimization, and Factorio, your incentive is to use the resources efficiently and to use your time efficiently. If your goal in Factorio is to build a rocket or whatever, not everyone always has that as a goal. Sometimes their goal is just to build interesting machines, and then you kind of ignore the optimization stuff. But if you're really optimizing for your time, not the resource, if there's enough resources to get you to build the rocket, maybe optimize for your time less than the resources. So, you could have like if everyone started on the same map, you could have a score, which is, how many resources you used to get to the rocket. I'm not saying that this is suppose the gameplay, instead of the goal is to escape the planet that you crash landed on, or whatever exactly it is in Factorio. Suppose the goal is, you're on a planetoid exploiting it for some, inner space corporation, and you're graded on how many of the resources you manage to get into space. So you have to build up this whole, space launch system and accumulate all of the resources from the thing and put them on the spaceships, which is really expensive in terms of fuel and etc. And it's like, okay, how many resources did you get into space? Then that might encourage you to optimize. But I don't know. I'm not sure that matters. I think making interesting looking and behaving machines is maybe more a valuable thing that the game encourages you to do. I mean, there's multiple directions for that too. Like what works well for Let's Plays to get your free marketing, and what feels fun when you're just playing it for yourself. And those may be different things. I don't know. So these are all stuff we can work on. I can work on. And I think this one is kind of the whole point of it. And so the fact that that's the part where I'm really imitating Factorio. Now, the conveyor belts is obviously the thing that is most Factorio-esque. I didn't have to do the conveyor belt style thing. But I think this is the point of the game, is to do this kind of making things out of other things. So I do have to do that, even though that may seem like ripping off Factorio. So I don't have to do the power distribution system. I think that's an interesting thing that sort of proves a cross-cutting concern, and that you have to build with different sets of geometry. The interesting thing about the liquid and the power is that you have these different things you're trying to flow. You have the conveyor belt stuff flowing on conveyor belts, stuff flowing in pipes, and stuff flowing with power. It's kind of cool to force you to have these things that all have to intersect geometrically. In 3D, it's a little easier because you could, I'm going to route all my liquids on these 2 levels, and then I'll route all my conveyor belts on these 3 levels, and then I'll route all my power on these levels. So it maybe isn't particularly challenging, but it's not exactly that challenging in Factorio either, because the power is just allowed to connect with cables. You have to make places to put down the power, but it just auto connects with cables that don't get blocked by the other stuff anyway. And then the belts and liquid pipes are all you only get 2 levels basically, and the second level is a cheat, but they are on the same levels, so they do conflict with each other. But the way you use them is often so different that it's not a big deal. And 2 levels is enough to route everything around everything else. It's mainly kind of a spacing thing. So one of the things I was thinking for power is that maybe anything that takes power, you start out without a power grid. You just put a motor, what would you call it? A generator. You just have these little tiny generators that have no range. Like every object, not a furnace. Furnace would probably, you could have electric furnaces. So they would have a side that they take input from, and a side that they output to, and a side that they take power from. And so on that power side, you just would plug in a generator. That's a separate block. So it's making you construct all. You need inserters or pickers, and you need the power thing. And then eventually, when you make a power grid, you can replace that power thing. Instead of being a generator block, it could just be some kind of connection to your power grid. And, eventually you get, at the high end, you get wireless power where you don't have to connect your power at all. You just need a nearby tower or something. I don't know if Factorio has that. That's just an obvious thing to do. Like, that's one of the problems you run into is you do the obvious thing, and it's what Factorio already did. Yeah, pipes, I would probably make pipes would be free to go up and down. Maybe you'd have to put pumps in or something. But yeah, you just dig out trenches and put your pipes in. Or don't. You just let them go overground. You can certainly also run your conveyor belts underground. Like maybe that's a way to defend against the enemy stuff. It's if you are allowed to place natural terrain blocks that they don't attack natural terrain blocks. And so you could build underground stuff by rebuilding over with those. But if you're not allowed to build with natural terrain blocks, you would have to build. You could dig stuff down. You could build trenches, put stuff down, and cover over them. But you'd be covering over them with something that the enemies could try to break. I don't think Factorio has wireless power. Well, they auto connect the wires for you, so it is still just range based in practice. So it's kind of just a graphics thing anyway. So I don't know how I would distinguish that. Like my wired power would maybe actually require you to, like in fact, Infinifactory uses wired power. Well, they're not power, right? They're just a logic network. Yeah, they're just a logic connections, but they use piping basically as wires, so that you have to physically route it. You could do the Minecraft redstone, where you put it on surfaces. Since I have a 2-layer renderings thing, I could have that you route power has to route over existing surfaces. The distribution from poles, substations to factories is wireless in Factorio. Okay, yeah. But also, while you have a generator, you need to feed it fuel. Yes, exactly. Like that would be an intentional thing, where when you're just starting out, you would put some coal in your generator. You'd have every machine has to have a generator, and you have to manually put all the coal in, and that's super annoying. But it's just while you're starting out. Then once you start automating things, these machines all need a generator, so you have to leave room for inserters on the inputs and the outputs. So you'd be limited to 2 inputs, right? So one side is input, another side is input, another side is output, and another side is power. Well, I guess you could get power from up and down too. So you could start doing stuff with that. But now you need belts. Now that generator needs an inserter to insert more coal. I'm just going to assume coal because that's coal in both Factorio and Minecraft, so why not? So now that just that simplest machine is taking up quite a few blocks because you need blocks for the pickers and blocks for the generator and the picker for that, and another conveyor belt coming in on that. And how do you get the elevation correct for that? So obviously we'll have pickers that can pick across elevations, but I think the whole problem with pickers being smart, being able to pick from multiple areas, not smart in that sense, but just being able to pick from multiple areas, is that you need to configure them potentially. And so it's easier if I just make a different type. Okay, here's the one that grabs from the near side of the belt. Here's the one that grabs from the far side of the belt. Eventually add smart ones that go and say, I know what types of inputs this thing needs, so I'll only pick from a limited area, maybe, like plus up and down by 1, and on from either side of the belt, but it'll only pick things that actually feed into it. So at that point, then you can just start routing things right together, and it just does everything automatically. But until then, you now have this problem of like, I'm trying to route in the belts with this input and the belt with that input, and route in the coal, and they all need to be at the same height. But that would cause collisions, so I need to bring one down from a ramp from somewhere. Like, that might be interesting. So there's a whole tree of things to think about when doing power there. And that will all maybe be too annoying busy work. And so it's just a question of whether that kind of arc of having to deal with the busy work at first is interesting or not. You know, like when you first start out, like I think Factorio doesn't require power to conveyor belts, it looked like. And I think I would make mine be powered. And so you can't even use conveyor belts until you start powering them. Although I don't know how you scope that, like how many things get powered by a single thing. I don't know how that would work. How are they connected? But that way, so what you do, what you could do is, like the current things require pickers, but you could set it up so that a drill that's immediately next to a furnace auto feeds into the furnace. Just that one case, like you could any case where a machine outputs a thing and another machine takes that as input, you could just directly, physically, geometrically put them next to each other, facing the right way. You could make that case work, and so then that let you start a little bit of automation without any belts. And then once you've started making enough stuff, you make the belts and start having a power system. Then you can start using the belts for real. Yeah, for the Factorio doesn't require power to belts for convenience, and that may be the better choice. Like maybe belts are too cool to make you not be able to use them initially. Maybe that's too annoying. Like that's the trade-off of all of these things. There's all these things where you can make the smart thing and maybe have that be tech that you can't get to initially, or it's expensive to get to initially, and encourage you to use the dumber things. But if the dumber things are more annoying to use, like does that feel good or does that just feel tedious? That's just a game design trade-off. All right, I need to. I gotta free up some space on this drive so it quits bitching at me. You might have to make sure you move stuff on an incline if you want to make belts require power. I'm not sure what you mean by that. I mean, yeah, in the real world, it takes more power to move something up than to move it flat. And moving it flat could take almost no power, but we don't have to subscribe to that kind of real world accuracy. So I don't know. I don't think anybody's expressed any opinion about what I should actually do. Am I doing all this on master? I am. Oh, I never added those. Yeah, liquids. Yeah, no. No, I don't think I want to deal with liquids now because that's a whole bunch of voxel garbage rather than the logistics garbage to get the initial liquids that you would do. Attached to specific block types that have OR. This I also don't have OR types. I don't have art for OR types, etc. That doesn't mean I can't do it. I can make OR art. Maybe I should get dinner. a second. I gotta check my email, which requires me to do that for a second, just because you never know. There's going to be something secret. I usually have this off the edge of my screen so that I don't have to do that. All right, there we go. A whole bunch of stuff. Oh, I see. Having things slide down. Well, so in Factorio, it's a little bit like Minecraft. You have an implausible inventory. So during the initial stuff, you can always get stuff going around. You just can't automate it. So you have to like manually, oh, here's a bunch of coal. Let me put it in each of these machines. And you can carry around a ton of coal. And if it weren't the case that both Factorio and Minecraft had that kind of huge inventory, I would think about being more realistic with it. But since both of them have that gigantic inventory, I don't feel much reason not to, since it seems good for gameplay. Inventory and resource nodes. I assume by resource nodes we mean things like ore. The inventory I'm a little less concerned about as a priority, because I can just I can just, like Minecraft creative mode, right? I can have an infinite number of blocks in my inventory and just limit myself for gameplay reasons, much like when I was putting down the pickers, I obeyed the size constraints, even though they're not being tested by the game. So in the same way, I could pretend I have an inventory, have infinite numbers of things, but not abuse having an infinite number of things while I'm testing. So I don't feel that much pressure to get the inventory system working. That's such a sort of player-facing thing. It's not hard. It's not the simulation behavior doesn't rely on it. So yeah, the only question about doing power now is, should I be doing power at all? Or is that too much? Is that too Factorio-esque? Is there something else I could be doing? So this is kind of a list of things that are obviously kind of inspired by Factorio. So is there other stuff I could be doing? And you are free to suggest things, and I will reject almost all of them, because that's just how I am. But like this, right? Like, is the tower defense style gameplay of Factorio the right way to do enemies? I don't know. It's like kind of the obvious way, but it's only obvious because Factorio did it, or is it really the obvious way? Have people done 3D voxel tower defenses? I don't even know. Like, maybe that's a good thing to clone because people haven't done 3D voxel tower defenses, and that will feel different from Factorio as well. I don't know. Thermal power, yeah, you definitely could use lava, Minecraft-style lava, as thermal power. Minecraft actually has that. You can put lava in furnaces. And then, yeah, you make a steam engine to turn the thermal power into electric power. Sorry, the Factorio way to do it. But of course, I don't have any lava in my world at all at this point. I don't have any water in my world at all at this point. So I'd have to add all that stuff to get that kind of thing going. Which doesn't make it impossible, just as a thing to consider. I mean, I do have the STB voxel render does have like transparent rendering modes. Ooh, but the transparent water actually, it doesn't actually have, I don't have the thing to sort out the transparencies properly. I have to add that. I don't know, the idea that you'd have to find it, where the failures are, just seems tedious to me. Like Factorio gives you icons telling you, oh, this thing doesn't have power, or this thing is damaged. So it's not a pixel hunt to find those things. Because you could imagine that, yeah, it's like this debugging problem. Oh, my factory isn't producing stuff. Let me trace back and find where things went wrong, fix it. Could be interesting gameplay, but I feel like if you just have things constantly perturbing that, that's like kind of boring. I don't know for sure, but it feels like in Factorio there's two ways that happens. One is because you built it wrong. So you still do get that debugging experience when you built something wrong. And two is if monsters do break through your defenses and start destroying stuff, then they will damage the machines. But you can prevent it by building defenses. So it normally doesn't happen that often, and it's kind of under your control how hard you work at avoiding that. I've never seen the Tech Minecraft mod, so I don't know exactly how they work. The surface level drills, so the issue there is that things that just drill really far down and find the ore that happens to be in a given block way down, you can't see that it's doing that. There's no, like, the fun of this is seeing everything going. I guess we could leave it running while we're talking. So if you look at Factorio, the more advanced miners are these things that sort of sweep back and forth a little bit like these pickers do. Mining over a range of multiple blocks. And so there's activity on the screen. And yeah, one thing I thought about is you could imagine a block that's like a drill, but it only affects, say, the block beneath it, and it leaves behind a block beneath it just with the ore gone, but there's still a block. And you could imagine you set up this drill and it's got sort of like a motor, and it consumes everything it can out of this one, and then it advances to the next square, and it consumes everything out of that, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, and then if it could drill all the way down under the earth, you could then imagine that one thing could be, over a long period of time, could eventually gather a lot of resources. But one of the things that happens is as it's moving, where is it outputting to? Like if it outputs behind it, there's not going to be belts or anything behind it. So you'd have to have it outputting to the side, which means you'd already have to have laid out the belts for it. I guess you could just lay belts going the opposite direction. So something like that could be workable. That might be interesting. But I think having it drill way down under the ground isn't interesting. I think that, the idea is to have automation of various kinds. So maybe, like, hey, the trees, some kind of automation for the tree, felling the trees. Like, obviously, if you could grow new trees, then you could construct a, whatever you call it, a little tree farm, and line up the trees exactly, so then you can have machines that cut through the trees exactly. But it's not very realistic to have trees grow that fast the way they do in Minecraft. And so I think I maybe want to stay away from that. And instead, it's just how the world you're in has giant swaths of trees, and go build machines to cut down the trees and chop up the wood and send them back. And I don't know what those machines would look like or how they would work when things are random like this, and they're on slopes and stuff. I have no idea how to get to that state, but that could be a state you could get to. On the other hand, maybe you don't need wood that much once you're in the later stages, so it's not interesting. But so maybe you make strip miners that do roll along and just flatten terrain, for out here, that generate, I don't know, but if they hit anything, maybe they're just terrain flatteners, and if they do hit anything, that's just output temporarily, output to the side or something. I don't know. There's a bunch of possibilities for that kind of stuff, and I haven't really made any choices about it. I have a bunch of ideas of what might be interesting, but I don't know how to get there. And I wanted to sort of focus just initially on the the logistics core rather than the dealing with natural world problems. Well, caves are kind of out or not. Like, so suppose the surface ore that you can find is very limited, and you do have to go into caves to find the other ore, and then you need some way to get the stuff out of the cave. You know, like, the caves are still the best way to find it. On the other end, you know, the Minecraft caving system isn't necessarily something that you need. Just because you're a voxel game, you don't need to have that kind of thing. You could just have, you know, some kind of ground penetrating radar that helps you locate resources under the ground, and you do still have to drill down to them to get to them, but maybe you have to rather than a drill that just accesses them from the surface, because that also makes the voxels irrelevant. Maybe you actually have to dig out a big, you know, if there's a patch down there that's 16 by 16, maybe you have to actually dig out a 16 by 16 hole all the way down. Or maybe that's the easiest way. Maybe you could dig a narrow hole, get down to where it is, and then build a mining operation. Maybe that's the easier way to do it. I don't know. There's a bunch of possibilities for that, but you don't actually have to do caving, Minecraft style caving, and I'm not sure that having Minecraft style caving is a benefit. As long as you do make some use of the 3D-ness of the voxels. But even if you don't have all that, you still have the Infinifactory style thing, just of making your factory three-dimensional, which you don't have to do, I guess, if you're willing to spread out. So maybe there's incentives not to spread out because you want to keep your power all nearby. Maybe if you have enemies and have to build defenses, building vertically reduces the amount of area, the amount of stuff you have to build to defend yourself, so you'd rather not spread out. You know, there's a bunch of reasons that the 3D becomes valuable. So. Yeah, and so automation, somebody was asking about automation. So I don't think I would ever get to the point where the drones, you could have drones that like fly around and locate the stuff for you. But I don't think I would ever let them choose where to construct. I think the choosing where to construct is something that should always be on you. It just feels like that's where some of the pleasure of the fact that you're building a machine is. But I'm not opposed to blueprints, like the way Factorio does it is with constructor robots, so you can place down a blueprint and then constructor robots build the stuff over time. I've seen Minecraft mods that are just a blueprint and it just builds everything in the blueprint at once, I think, based on what you have in your inventory. Maybe it's going over time. I don't know exactly how they work. I haven't seen them in much detail. But the constructor robot is kind of a nice thing because it's that's the thing. Doing the robots is going to be a little too Factorio-ish, but you know, having robots that move things instead of using belts, having flying robots that move things instead of using belts so they're faster is, you know, an interesting tech upgrade. And then certainly having constructor robots and drones, combat drones are also interesting things. And combat drones are a long-term fictional thing that we've had in many fictions. So I don't see much reason not to do that if I do go down the whole enemies kind of path. The enemy thing doesn't have to be tower defense. They could be more like Minecraft enemies that are sturdier, that you have to manually defend. Maybe you just can only make detectors and you have to kill them all yourself. I don't know. That's possible. I don't know how they would get over walls. They'd have to knock down walls themselves, I guess. Or they'd be spiders and be able to climb over them. I don't know. You could build teleporters so that you could go long distances. Yeah, although I kind of prefer teleporters where you have to place both endpoints, so you have to have gone there by hand. But then they're just a time saving. They're not. Excuse me. Not helping you explore large areas or anything, which it's kind of an open question. Like, if given the infinite world thing, maybe exploiting the infinite world is an interesting idea. So maybe the resources. Maybe the game by design intentionally starts you in a resource poor area where there's enough for you to build, to get some initial stuff going, but not big things that let you get the really advanced stuff going. And then you have to embark on a search. You have to build the stuff that helps you search to find where the big things are. And maybe the big things are in totally different places. Maybe the big patch of iron is in a totally different place than the big patch of copper, and you have to figure out how to deal with that. You can do the train kind of thing that Factorio has for larger distances. In Factorio, the distances never get that big, but you can definitely do that here. It's a little bit like Minecraft minecarts. So, there's precedent for both of those, precedent in both games again. So, if you're making Minecraft meets Factorio, trains are a pretty reasonable thing. And that would just encourage you to sort of build these really big, not big, but covering a lot of area, which might be interesting. So, yeah, I think this email isn't going to get answered. I'll give it another 10 or 15. Or drone traders. Well, yeah, so another thing you could do is instead of having enemies, you could have other people out there with resources that will trade with you or something. Maybe your goal is to accumulate money, and you make things and sell them off, and the resources you don't have you can buy. I guess that starts becoming like off-world trading company or something, although I've never seen even a Let's Play of it. I know very little about it. That would be possible. But then I have to build some kind of representation of the other people, the other things, and no, it would not be multiplayer. They could be AIs that are machines themselves, so that I don't have to deal with making plausible characters. All right, well, I think I'm going to do some of the conveyor belt work. Earlier we said, no, don't do any conveyor belt work. Let's do something new. And so I put aside the conveyor belt work, but I think it does need to happen. So, day and night cycle. Yeah, I haven't thought about day-night cycle kind of stuff at all. It's in Minecraft and it's in Factorio, so... the thing is, it doesn't really impact very much here. In Factorio, it's, one of the reasons it's interesting is because you have solar panels for the power system. Then that's a pretty interesting trade-off there. And Minecraft, it's obviously because of the enemies. But I think the day-night cycle without one of those things involved isn't very important. So it's really just going to be graphical, and so probably not worth doing. So yeah, I think I will go ahead and try to do some of the cleanup with the conveyor belt stuff. So the priority one, and this is going to invalidate all of my save, which is okay. Let's go ahead and copy it again, just in case. Yeah, so there were reasonable argument that the next thing to do is to start having ore types and drillers and a furnace, and the furnace that requires coal as power or pseudo power is probably a reasonable place to start working on that part of the sim, and I agree. But I think I'll do this just because it's just making a mess of everything, still having that in there. This one, and then this is something that will make the factory much more reasonable because you can actually route stuff without it all ending up on the wrong side, or without that, which then probably means I do need to add some kind of system for moving things from side to side, although you can currently do that by routing around to a particular side. You maybe need the balancer, or I think is what Factorio calls it, or splitter. I guess maybe it's both, depending on whether you have 2 inputs and 1 output, or 1 output and 2 inputs, or both, or 2 inputs and 2 outputs. So what we want to do is get rid of the east part of this. And then that'll just break a whole bunch of compilation stuff, so we can just go fix that as it comes up. Not sure why do I need to pass in the rotation for it? That's a little odd. Oh, synopsization. That's why. That's an interesting bug. Wonder what that was doing. Create something rot conveyor. That is ramp head, ramp up, low, ramp down, high. We just need to test equals against each of these. Will you have ore qualities other than 1 block equals 1 ore? Yes. Yeah, that's Factorio is the thing to follow there, and they do. Is that what I called them? Ramp up low. Conveyor, ramp up low. Oh, that's my closing parenthesis. What was this doing? This is a rot. And then this is ramp up south low. So that was just determining if it was this, I think. Yeah, it's just whether it was up. right, because this one has to go. This one has to be moved lower. We need to disable the load. And then we just use this code for all cases now. And this is conveyor or ramp down low. Except it doesn't need to do this anymore. It just does this as well. So it's exactly the same code as this. So we just need that logic to all be changed to be table driven instead of using range tests eventually. This is block, not base. There. These don't need to loop. We don't need to add I. And then this only needs one. All right. And now it claims I fixed everything, which seems pretty unlikely, but maybe. What else might I need to change that didn't come up here? I need to actually propagate the rotation into, right, so here we had the rotation stored in the geom, but now we're passing in the rotation, so these were all broken actually. If I ever tried to make a slope thing, I think it would have been broken since I added the rotation support. So these now need to be like this. And then there's only one of these, 3 of these. Go away, 3 go away, 3 go away, 3 go away. And since I'm reorganizing this, it's time to reorganize the block type thing actually. Is there anything else I need to do? So the rotations should be getting set automatically because I'm now going through the path where it did that. Well, maybe it works, I don't know. So build some stuff. Rotate it. Nope, that didn't work. Okay, I copied the wrong line. I remember noticing that. It seemed weird when I was copying it. I copied the wrong one. Yeah. That rotated the wrong way. Rotated the opposite direction from what it used to rotate. So I suspect the physics is going to be broken. suspect the physics is going to try to move it the wrong way. Oops. Tried to rotate. I pressed rotate when I was in bogus, pointing out a bogus thing. E is null. Yeah, that's just a bug. So why does that rotation go the wrong way? Well, I remember I flipped the rotation when I feed it into the voxel stuff because it seemed to be going the wrong way around. But maybe now I flipped it the wrong way. All right, so what if I rotate this? This one rotates. Okay, so maybe the rotation code in the STP voxel render is actually wrong. It's totally possible. I might never have tested that part. I may have never tested the texture rotation. So where that's stored in a table. That's not even a separate thing. Default text gen. I forget, why is this? I thought these should be S. Then why is it reversed on the next one? The bottom two bits are the rotation, and then the next thing is which side. So X, Y, so we need to know which ones are up and down. Okay, so up. So I think the up one is backwards is the basic problem. So that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. This one, the rotation order is backwards. It's my theory. I don't know how I came up with this table, so I don't know if that's at all plausible. I don't remember. I assume I tested it, but maybe I didn't. So we'll just make that assumption for now, that I screwed that up. So that's as expected. The rotations of these things seem to work. Oops. All right. I believe I've got conveyor belts working. Okay, now let's look at the sloped conveyor belts. If I can remember what order I have to do them in. Okay, right, so this uses a different texture generator because of the slope, so I have to go fix that one as well. And this one is just using the wrong texture. I don't know why that would be. Is that projecting from a different side? That doesn't make any sense. It used to work. What changed? What did I change on this? It's still v height. Did I just not texture it correctly? Did I update the texture setting code wrong? Maybe. And then I should do the other ones then as well. Oops. If I rotate them, doesn't make any difference. All right, let's save that. That's weird that one of them has the right face and the others are wrong. Oh, that's the lowest numbered one. Okay, so yeah, I must have just not updated something. Oh, I know what I did. I know what it was. Where is that? Init, mesh, something like that. No, it's not main, it's in mesh builder. There we go. I think this, that doesn't make any sense. It's just plus I. Oh, I'm not loading. I gotta rename the load. I'm probably going to try to put in a second speed of conveyor belts, but I don't know, because the way I'm doing the ticking, it may turn out to be too much of a pain in the ass. I mean, you can always just put down 2 conveyor belts to get twice the throughput, right? So, all right, so it looks like all the slopes are off by 180 degrees. So then let's build something facing this way and see how they do. Is it copying the rotation or not? That seems to be off by 90 degrees. So let me rebuild these. Oops. So we put this down. Now we know which way the orientation is. Okay. So we want something oriented the same way. We go that one. Okay, it's just backwards. But that one's. So wait, if I just rotate it, it's not even rotating. It's not obeying the rotation. Why would that be? 2 possibilities. It's not getting set. Oh no, but the geometry is obeying the rotation. So it definitely sees the rotation there. So it must be in the text gen thing again. Maybe I just totally screwed up that table. Because I never messed with having asymmetrical top faces. Okay, so then what is that? Which thing do they use for the up face? Default normals. Which table generates this? Geom. Okay, we're using floor v height. Oh, maybe the v height stuff. Yeah, the v height has to do something special for to compute which normal to use. Here it is. It computes which normal to use for planar v heights. Okay, and the cases that we have are like 0011-esque. Why are there negatives? I don't even know what this is. Oh, it's planar, so one of them can be negative. But you can't encode that. I don't know. Oh, if they have a negative, they have a 0. Okay. So yeah, we use a lot of ups. So the question is, are we using planar face up normal? What is this ifdef? Config optimized v height. I don't think we're using config optimized v height. We might be though, because I cut and pasted this from something else. Optimized v height. No, we're not. So I did test that stuff because I tested the optimized v height stuff. But this is ignoring the texture gen stuff. So face up normal. We extract this stuff, we have a rotate somewhere. Make mesh for face. Why is this greater than equal to? Oh, I see. Right. This is if it's so it's the up face here. We use the heights to find out what planar face up normal to use. So let's make mesh for face. Make mesh for face. So they compute text for each vertex. Somewhere we store somewhere we build the face data. Where do we build the face data? Maybe we've already made it. Oh, compute mesh face value. Compute mesh face value. So somewhere we compute the base info. Normal shift left 2 if it's untextured. Normal shift left 2 plus face rot. Okay, where did face rot come from? It comes from the side text rot info. Otherwise, it comes from rot.faceRot, which probably makes the bottom rotate the wrong way. But we are encoding it. Is it possible the rotation isn't getting? No, because the geometry is rotating. So it's definitely getting rotated. We're just somehow losing the texture rotation. Okay, yeah, I just got to step into it. So world, no, main, disable the load. And then v height. Just want to break somewhere in V height, I think. Support block V height here, but I already have block V. I'm using block V height. And it's already working. And rotate it. Okay. Generate and split faces. So the up face, planar, step in. Compute mesh face value. Face rot is 0. Okay. So where did face rot come from? Comes from rot, which is the second value passed in, which is rot here, which is the caller rotate. Which is initialized to 0, 0, 0. Okay, but in this path, rotate.face rot goes to 0, but we set it to simple rot here. And we have that one. So we need to do the same thing in this. I think I wasn't because I thought you didn't want to rotate them if they're sloped. Right, because if they're the top thing, it's not necessarily mapping. I think it is, though, always. So when we do the up height, the up one, we do that, which is not called simple rot now. It's called what? No, it is called simple rot. All right. And in the down, we do whatever this was in the other one. Negative. So I need to propagate this stuff back to the main one. Right, so that was just a bug. Slopes weren't getting their things updated. And then after we've made that face, we can say rotate that face rot. 0. Okay, I think that fixes that. If else the adjacent motor, and then you could upgrade the motor. Yeah, that might be interesting way to do it. So then downward 5, 4. Then we turn. And then we go upwards. And then go along. And we turn. We go upwards. And we go upwards. And then we turn. And we go downwards. So it should not affect us in at all, I think, but we'll just check that everything's still working. The main problem I have with belts at multiple speeds is the transition between the belts. I'm not sure how to handle that. And the fact that they need different tick rates, or probably just make the long tick happen twice as often, but have the slow belts only process on every other one basically, and have to tweak the animation code to make that work. Of course, in Factorio you can zoom out really far. Oh, something a little glitchy happening here. So that stuff is leaping ahead for some reason across this boundary. Oh, because I created a cycle, and so the cycle always has a glitch somewhere on the cycle. That's fine. Because you're unlikely to do that in a real machine. You'll at least have a splitter or some kind of thing in the cycle that changes, or balancer that changes that breaks the cycle anyway. Okay, so I got that working. And as a result, I don't need different textures for all of them. So let's fix that too. CD data machinery. Now I don't remember, does Git just figure this out? Or do I have to git delete? Yeah. Now it figures out renames. Okay, that doesn't show it as knowing that got renamed, but whatever. Okay, and then in the main where we load these three go away. And that means we've renumbered them. So we go to Mesh Builder, and the textures are now different. Anything with conveyor or higher is changed. Why was stone? Oh no, these are block types. Right. So 21 or higher got changed. That's 21. That's 22. 22 is unchanged. 23, 24, 25 are gone. So these are 23 and 24. And now we don't actually have a picker block type, so we could actually get rid of this code. This is invalid. If you ever try to create it, it'll produce something goofy. All right. I think that's everything. Just check the textures on these. Oops, I'm animating the wrong textures now. Yep, that's correct. That's in voxel render. You only need to update this one. Okay, that looks reasonable. All because I had forgotten that STB Voxel Render supported that feature. So sad. T-piece that routes one color one way and the rest opposite. Yeah, the idea would be to make a T-piece that splits the left stream one way and the right side the other way, rather than the intermix. So the idea is that maybe further down the tech tree you add smart logic that can split, that if you start mixing stuff on belts, you can start splitting them back up. Like we talked about with smart pickers. But the idea would be that initially you would have to carefully route everything, and you can put different things on the two sides of the belt and potentially split them later. But having it be sensitive to what's in the thing, I feel like it's something you save for the smarter logic, and that lets you make things more compactly because you can just start interleaving stuff on the belts. But a lot of the times you don't really want to do that because you want to keep everything independent, because when a given thing isn't getting consumed and it backs up, it'll actually back up and stop trying to create new ones and actually conserve power when the thing is idle, and that like pushes all the way back up the chain. But if you start intermixing things into a single stream, if one of them backs up, it prevents the other one from advancing. Like if it backs up all the way to the split point, and then before the split point, now the other thing in that split point stream can never make forward progress. Now, obviously, if you're picturing that your factor is just always, everything is always running, then that's not necessary. But it's pretty common to sort of have built something and then it's like, okay, I don't really need this stuff anymore, so let me just disable the endpoint and leave the other stuff sitting around in case I want it later. So the splitter is definitely a thing. I guess it's not on the to-do list, but it's been in my head this whole time. Splitter, split sides in opposite directions. So that's a passive splitter is the idea. You wouldn't need any power for it. It's just a V in the middle of the thing. Directions. Balancer. I think the Factorio balancer balances like the left side between two left sides, and the right side between two right sides, and never crosses them. And I think you probably want some kind of cross thing. But you gotta figure out what's optimal for gameplay. Like what feels like forces you to do the right amount of work to make it all work. If it's too easy, you can easily put in all sorts of things that automate stuff that just makes it too easy. Doesn't feel like you're doing any work when you build it. Doesn't seem like you're making anything interesting because it just all works. So if you build everything super smart, it's maybe too trivial. So you have to figure out what the right stuff to do is. All right, so I think I want to see if this mail. Nope. All right, so I think I want to get dinner. So I'm going to stop and do dinner. The next thing I have to do actually is reorganize the block IDs to be sane. I'm going to put a fragment in the code. Or there, rather. To make sure I don't forget that when I come back. Just because since I've invalidated my save files, I might as well do that. Figure out some organization to this that is more sane. Part of the gameplay should be doing with homogeneous streams versus hetero, and some things should be rare in some cases, and vice versa. Yeah, that's definitely reasonable. I don't know which thing I don't know which thing I said an hour ago, or you said an hour ago. Yeah, I don't know where the trade-offs for that kind of mixing would be. I was just thinking about how it works in Factorio, and it's pretty easy in Factorio to not mix things because everything goes in sort of targeted routes, and you kind of the idea is that you really want to get high throughput, and so you kind of put everything wants, you need enough belts to get the high throughput for everything. So like mixing streams is kind of implies that each of the streams are sort of low throughput, and so because there's few enough of them that you can share them on a thing. Like if you were cramped and you were forced to route things onto the same belt, then it would make sense that you'd want the mixed heterogeneous stuff that you need to separate out. But as long as you're not cramped, I think you wouldn't tend to want to build that way. But I don't know. It's maybe my thinking there is maybe too influenced by Factorio. Okay, so that was stream 26.3. So I'm going to stop and get dinner and maybe take a little break. And when I come back, we'll start stream number 27. So thanks for watching, and I will re-announce on Twitter when that's happening. And I'll answer questions in the stream for a little bit here as well. All right, see you next time, which is right now if you're watching on YouTube, if you want.